Hey students, welcome to another Mr. Ness screencast. Today's aim is Models of Urban Land Use Global, and here are your objectives. Please pause the video, look these questions over, and get ready to copy some vocab terms and take some notes. In the previous video, you learned about land use in American cities, and in this video, you're going to learn about land use in cities in other parts of the world, specifically in Western Europe and in the developing world. As you watch, look for differences between how cities are structured in these countries compared to in the US. Let's start with Europe. If you've never been to a European city, it's hard to understand just how different they feel from American cities. First of all, Western European cities are densely populated, with many more people living in them than in American cities. And most residents live in apartments. Zoning is mixed use, so there are many services in the city, including bakeries, grocery stores, bars, and cultural activities. And because these cities were all developed hundreds or even thousands of years ago, they were designed to be walked. Streets are narrow and contain low-rise structures without yards. There are usually no highways in European cities. Instead, the city is surrounded by a highway called a ring road. Secondly, European cities have zoning laws that limit the height of buildings downtown, and that means that there are not a lot of skyscrapers in the CBD. Instead, historic buildings like cathedrals are preserved as the tallest structures. And as you can see in this picture of Paris, the tallest structure is the Eiffel Tower, not a skyscraper. Some European cities have a separate area outside the city that is devoted to financial services, creating a second CBD with high-rises that is distinct from the historic downtown. And that area is then more similar to the traditional American CBD with many high-rises. And Paris has a separate business district like this called La Défense, which was built from scratch in 1958 on land that is 3 kilometers outside the city limits. Next, in European cities, unlike in the US, wealthier residents tend to live within the city limits, while poorer residents live in the suburbs outside the city. Suburbs in European cities are really different from suburbs in America. Instead of low-density, auto-dependent suburbs, European suburbs have high population density and many high-rise apartment buildings. This picture shows a typical suburb of Paris. Notice all of the apartment blocks. Residents of European suburbs are often immigrants from Africa or the Middle East. Finally, unlike US suburbs, European suburbs are well served by public transit, with train and bus lines that allow residents to commute from their home in the suburbs into the city each day for work. This picture shows one of the many commuter trains that run between Paris and its outlying suburbs. Now let's look at cities in developing countries, specifically those that were former European colonies. A commonly used model to describe these cities is called the Griffin-Ford model. And although this model was used initially to describe cities in Latin America, it has features that are common to cities in many developing countries. First, in the center of the city is a CBD built by Europeans during imperialism. Unlike in the US, upper-class residents of these cities live in the CBD and along this commercial spine or boulevard, which extends outwards from the CBD and has facilities like restaurants, theaters, and shopping centers. These areas are surrounded by concentric zones of neighborhoods that decrease in income level as you move away from the CBD. Poorer residents live in zones of disamenity, meaning industrial areas that may be noisy or polluting. And squatter settlements, residential areas built by people with no legal claim to the land, dominate the periphery or the outskirts of the city. Squatter settlements are slums with little infrastructure inhabited by recent migrants from the countryside. In Brazilian cities, squatter settlements are called favelas. The existence of squatter settlements is a major difference between cities in the developing world and cities in more developed countries like the US or in France. Remember, any model of a city that has squatter settlements is always going to be a model of a city in a developing country. Alright, it's time to review the objectives. If you don't know the answer to any of them, rewind the video and look again. I will see you in class. Bye, students.